Incredible moment. 5 wolves confront a defenseless fawn. What happened next will shock you. Ethan knelt in the brush, eyes locked onto a fawn nibbling at the vibrant foliage. The sun painted the scene in golden light, yet a heavy disquiet weighed upon him. Here in Montana he'd sought comfort, a remedy for the rift tearing through his spirit, a reflection of his broken family. As the wildlife photographer inhaled the crisp air, memories of Jamie filled his mind. Their laughter echoed like whispers of the wind, together in moments cherished but now slipping farther away with each passing season. Suddenly, a rustle. A pack of 5 wolves emerged, their eyes fierce, stalking the fawn with predatory intent. Ethan's heart raced. He felt trapped in a world that mirrored his own turmoil, powerless to protect that which he loved. How often had he sat paralyzed during arguments with his ex-wife, watching as his family scattered like leaves in the autumn breeze. He felt their struggle, primal and raw, and instinctively raised his camera, unsure if taking the shot would make him an observer or a part of a tragedy. His fingers trembled over the shutter. Failure was written all over him. The wolves moved as one, their sinewy bodies flowing seamlessly through the underbrush. A horrific reality tugged at Ethan. The fawn's vulnerability reminded him of Jamie, alone and scared in a world he had helped fracture. Profound anguish coiled in his chest as he questioned everything. Was he meant to shield his son from pain, or let him grow resilient in the wilds of life's unpredictability? Each click of the camera echoed his dread, capturing an inevitable outcome he couldn't bear to witness, but felt compelled to document. As the pack encircled, Ethan's mind spiraled into a vortex of conflicting emotions. He longed to step in, to shout out and scare the wolves away, to fight back against the inevitable with the same fierce desperation he felt when the divorce papers landed on his kitchen table. But the weight of that decision pressed down hard. Was favoring the fawn another failure? This time as a father. Was his son destined to inherit the same scars he bore from a family torn apart? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The tension thickened. The air crackled with impending fate. Ethan's lens remained focused, but his heart raced for the fawn's survival, its innocence a stark contrast to the calculated ruthlessness of nature's pursuits. As the wolves prowled closer, he felt time dilate, with the world narrowing around him. The reverberations of his past echoed as he faced the relentless circle closing in. Maybe there were no heroes in this wild. Perhaps being a father meant standing back, wrestling with anguish and doubts, watching a life played out on nature's unforgiving stage. As the fawn stumbled, Ethan's breath caught. Time seemed to stagger. The wolves worked in unity, revealing a devastating beauty even in their brutal hunt, forcing him to confront the inextricable links of family ties and the weight of legacy. In that heartbeat, 2 worlds collided, a fawn's final moments becoming a haunting reflection of his own failures as a father. In the clutch of violence and instinct, he stood paralyzed, waiting for the next pulse of action, a decision that could either shatter him or urge him to reclaim hope amidst the wilderness of his own soul. Ethan's body felt rigid, anchored to the ground as the fawn collided with the harsh reality of its surroundings. The wolves, their predatory gaze fixed, exuded a coordinated malice that sent shivers down his spine. For a moment, he did not just witness the struggle of nature. He mirrored it within himself, grappling with his own fears and failures as a father. A snap of a nearby twig pulled him from the depths of his despair. The wolves were upon the fawn now. With each unflinching stride, they mirrored his thoughts, strategic, resolute, and unyielding. Ethan's heart clenched further as the primal urgency of the scene bled into his memory, igniting connections to every situation where he had felt powerless. Unlike his camera, which initiated action with a button press, his life lacked such clarity. Its complexities were layered, messy, and yet painfully beautiful. But what if pressing the shutter on this moment meant acknowledging his inability to act. A sudden clarity pierced the fog of his conflict. Perhaps he too needed to step back, not as a passive bystander, but as an engaged participant in his own narrative. He understood then that this moment, the Fawn's impending fate, reflected his own relationship with Jamie, both delicate and fraught with danger. Yet somehow, he felt compelled to intervene, not for the Fawn alone, but for himself. He lowered the camera from his face, its comforting bulk replaced by a sudden surge of action that coursed through him. The thought of Jamie rushing to mind, facial expressions flooded with the innocence of childhood and the joy of connection, acted as a catalyst. What would it mean for Jamie to grow up knowing that his father had stood by, watching life unfold without taking a stand? With resolve swelling inside him, Ethan sprang from his hiding spot. He knew the risks. Would this act of bravery lead to his own ruin? Yet in that heartbeat, doing nothing felt like relinquishing control of his own life narrative, the story he wished to reclaim for himself and for his son. His voice rang out through the trees, deep and resonant, cutting through the tension like a knife. "Get away from him," he shouted, a sense of authority surging forth that he had not felt in a long time. As the wolves momentarily paused, heads snapping toward the source of the sound, Ethan experienced an unexpected surge of empowerment. He turned, directing his voice like a spotlight, anchoring his presence firmly in this volatile landscape. However, the wolves seemed unperturbed by his intrusion. Their eyes glinted with a mixture of curiosity and annoyance, returning momentarily to their pursuit of the Fawn. Invoking strategies from his past relationships when conflict raged, Ethan devised a plan. He needed to redirect their attention, to instill fear of the unknown instead of the helpless Fawn. Adrenaline coursed through his veins as he picked up a handful of rocks, launching them toward the pack with fierce intent. They scattered briefly. He could see the momentary hesitation in their stance. For the first time in a long while, he felt in command of his choices, no longer trapped in the shadows of indecision. With every step forward, he breathed determination, clinging to the hope that this small act could forge a path toward a better future, for both the Fawn and himself. But as the wolves retreated, a deeper fear crept in. Had he acted too late? Had he preserved innocence now? What strength lay within him yet to be unleashed, and how would he muster it when the inevitable confrontations arose in his life? Conflicted yet determined, Ethan stood rooted in place, the deep breaths of nature enveloping him. The Fawn was freed, albeit for the moment, but he understood that every decision henceforth would require him to dig deeper into his reserves of courage. He had wrestled with his past, now he must shape his future. Facing the tension of his own life, he pondered the essence of fatherhood. Could he embrace this uncertainty, channeling it into a learning moment for Jamie? With this new resolve rippling within, Ethan glanced back at the retreating wolves, half expecting them to re-emerge, and wondered whether true redemption would ever take hold. The weight of his choices loomed, and he took a step forward into the uncertain wilderness of life, determined but uncertain where the path would eventually lead him. The time had come to face his greatest fear, the haunting reminder of his own vulnerability as a father. Would he be able to teach Jamie how to navigate the dangers ahead? Ethan stood, deeply rooted in the raw wilderness, the adrenaline from his recent confrontation still coursing through his veins. The Fawn was gone, but the moment hung around him like a thick fog, a palpable reminder of his actions. He could still feel the weight of his own vulnerability. He confronted the very fears he had buried beneath layers of routine and suppressed feelings. What if the wolves returned? What if he failed to protect the ones he loved? He moved away from the clearing, heart pounding as he navigated through the underbrush, each snap of a twig mirroring the crackle of uncertainty in his mind. He had acted, yes, but now he was left to face the aftermath of that decision. Ethan was not the hero he aspired to be, nor the passive figure he had been. He needed to reconcile these two identities. The wilderness had always been a sanctuary for Ethan, a refuge where he could observe life unfolding unnoticed. Now, it had become a mirror reflecting his inner discontent. He pulled out his camera once more, but instead of capturing the beauty of the moment, he found it difficult to focus. Each click echoed with the question, what did he truly want to capture? An image, or something deeper? His own awakening. As he walked, His thoughts turned to Jamie. What stories will I tell him? The realization washed over him that just as he had stood defiant for the fawn, he needed to adopt a similar stance in his relationship with Jamie. There was an urgency now, an obligation to demonstrate bravery in moments of conflict. He recalled how he had often shied away from uncomfortable conversations, choosing instead to freeze rather than risk opening old wounds. Regaining composure, Ethan practiced articulating what he wanted to convey. Son, the world can be harsh, but there's strength in vulnerability. Would those words resonate with Jamie, who already felt the tumult of growing up? He stumbled on a rock, jarring him from reverie. His clumsiness in the physical world mirrored a deeper trepidation, his concerns about fatherhood. His small detour brought him to a rise overlooking the horizon, the setting sun painting everything golden. It stirred something in him. The vista sparked a thought. He needed to be present, not just physically, but emotionally, for Jamie. He envisioned moments, sitting down together to talk, guiding him through the trials that life would inevitably present. Each heartache, each challenge, could be transformed into a lesson, a means to unlock their shared resilience. But the shadows of self-doubt soon threatened to engulf his resolve. What if I fail him? He had not been a standard-bearer in his own life, and the dread of passing that same ineptitude onto Jamie haunted him. Determined, he began to walk back home, his steps deliberate, each footfall a promise made to himself. The idea blossomed. He could learn alongside Jamie, using their experiences to shape a stronger relationship. It was not about being a flawless father. It was about progression, understanding, and courage in the face of adversity. Suddenly, a growl hummed through the air, more potent than the fleeting fear he had felt faced with the wolves. He froze, turning slowly to scan the surroundings. Had the wolves returned? His heart sped up, not in intimidation this time, but in a fierce desire to prepare for whatever was next. This was where his journey began, not merely as a father contending with his fears, but as a man ready to confront the unpredictability of life. His resolve solidified, Ethan felt an electric thrill of adrenaline and anticipation. This was about shaping the narrative with Jamie, forging a trajectory of growth, learning to withstand life's onslaught together. But as he reached the edge of his property, he caught sight of a familiar silhouette moving toward the house. Jamie, standing at the doorstep, expression unreadable. Could this be the moment to share his battle and help his son navigate the wilderness that lay ahead? Ethan took a deep breath, knowing that as much as he wanted to shield Jamie from pain, the true challenge came in facing it together. What would he say? Would he invite his son to share his burdens, or would he opt to pretend everything was flawless? This was their wilderness. The moment of truth was upon him. Ethan's heart raced as he stepped onto the porch, his mind reeling with possibility and anxiety. Jamie's eyes were locked on him, searching for answers in the same way a fawn peered into the shadows, vigilant yet uncertain. This was a juncture he could not afford to mishandle, a moment to lay bare his soul without succumbing to the icy grip of fear. "What were you doing out there?" Jamie finally asked, breaking the silence, his tone a mixture of curiosity and concern. Ethan hesitated, weighing his words. He could easily brush off the encounter, cloaking it in vague reassurances. But he recalled the fierce lesson of the fawn, a lesson of the critical importance of confronting uncomfortable realities. He squared his shoulders, deciding that any attempt to conceal his truth would only serve to build the walls that separated them. "I saw some wolves," he said, his voice steadier than he felt, "but I realized something important while I was out there." "What's that?" Jamie pressed, stepping closer, his youthful naivety interspersed with growing awareness. Ethan gestured towards the dusky landscape, uncertainty still flickering within him. "The wilderness teaches us about courage, Jamie. I've always tried to protect you from hardship, thinking that I could shield you from the world's dangers. But I've learned that it's okay to face them together. It's how we grow." Jamie's brow furrowed, the wheels in his mind turning. "What do you mean?" "It's about being honest," Ethan continued, gradually finding rhythm in his explanation. "About sharing our struggles, even when it feels tough. I want us to talk about things that scare us, not ignore them. Like how I felt when I had to stand up for that fawn today. It matters for you, for me, and for the journey we'll face. Jamie shifted, caught between reluctance and the urge to delve deeper. But if we talk about scary stuff, won't it make everything worse? Ethan shook his head, a wave of warmth washing over him as he saw the reflection of his own hesitations mirrored in his son. Not if we're in it together. Opening up can be a source of strength, Jamie. Just like acknowledging fears in the wild. If we confront those fears, we learn how to navigate them. We're building resilience. As he spoke, Ethan felt a mental shift. This was not just about teaching his son. It was the beginning of his own apprenticeship in authenticity. Ethan's pieces were aligning, the fugitive doubts giving way to a fiery determination to evolve, to share the wilderness that had shaped him. Jamie studied Ethan, uncertainty mingling with a spark of realization. You really think we can do that? I believe we can. But it starts here right now, Ethan said, his voice firm with conviction. We can learn from each other. You're facing your own wilderness, Jamie, and I want to help guide you through it. Let's promise to talk, no matter how hard it may seem. A silence enveloped them, the weight of Ethan's revelation hanging heavy in the evening air. In that quiet space, he noticed the shift in Jamie's expression. The storm of vulnerability seemed to soften, allowing for a tentative understanding. Just as a slight smile began to form on Jamie's lips, the growl pierced the serenity once more, this time closer, sharper. Panic infused the air thickly, and Ethan's senses kicked into high gear. The wolves were here. Stay close to me, Jamie, Ethan urged, a primal instinct awakening within him as the shadows of danger flickered at the edge of the property. The wilderness may be a classroom for both father and son, but this imminent threat represented the very core of their lesson. In the face of danger, they would be compelled to dig deeper into their burgeoning courage. Would they embrace this moment together? Would vulnerability blossom into strength? The howl echoed through the trees, pulling them into an unanticipated test, an authentic confrontation that could redefine their bond. The question loomed large. How would they emerge from this wild confrontation? Would this shatter their courage, or ignite a deeper resolve? The howling reverberated in the stillness like a battle cry, sharp enough to slice through Ethan's resolve. In that moment, weaker instincts bubbled up, urging retreat, but the weight of his earlier promises to Jamie held him firm. It was no longer just about facing fears independently. They would have to rely on each other as a formidable unit. Stay behind me, he instructed, voice steady yet laced with urgency. Though the woods were an alien domain of both beauty and peril, this particular threat drew the line between protection and exposure. As shadows danced closer, Ethan felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise. The wolves moved with predatory grace, their eyes glinting like cold steel, taking stock of the unfamiliar beings before them. He could feel the mounting fear seeping into his veins, but now was not the time for panic. Control. Concentrate on the situation. This was a vital lesson for both him and Jamie. They would need to strategize, find a way to deflect the wolves without succumbing to sheer fright. Remember how we talked about facing fears? Ethan whispered, sensing Jamie's trepidation radiating from behind him. This is our chance, our real moment. We stand together. We protect ourselves by staying calm. Jamie's breath hitched, but there was a newfound resolve glistening in his eyes as he echoed, "Together." That single word resonated through the tension like optimistic music, a subtle reminder of their pact. In the heart of danger, they found each other. Ethan scanned their surroundings, taking note of the dry branches scattered across the ground. Every instinct pushed him to be the protector, yet he was acutely aware that his role now included allowing Jamie to witness courage in action, to face their challenge as partners. Shifting his focus back to the wolves, he attempted to identify the alpha of the group. Among the sleek bodies, one emerged slightly ahead, its posture firm, surveying them with an insidious confidence. A flurry of thoughts raced through Ethan's mind. What could he possibly do to avert a conflict without putting Jamie in harm's way? Okay, keep your voice low, Ethan instructed. If we can show them we're not a threat, perhaps they won't attack. He crouched slightly, adopting a non-threatening stance while simultaneously gauging Jamie's reactions. The young boy emulated his father, his enthusiasm cutting through the fear. As another growl pierced the tense air, Ethan's heart thumped louder. "You don't just face the wild, Jamie, you learn from it," he said, attempting to create a calm bubble despite the gathering storm. "It's what you do when things seem impossible that defines who you'll become." "Let's think," Jamie nodded, trying to absorb his father's mixed signals of fear and determination, confusion flitting across his young face. With each calculated second, Ethan felt the gravity of courage shift within him, the realization that fear could be reshaped. Most importantly, it was the knowledge that vulnerability was a cornerstone of genuine strength. "Just like the fawn today," Ethan said, emboldened by the thought. "It broke the norm by not fleeing. We can negotiate this. We draw from the wild's wisdom." The wolves edged closer, but the words propelled Ethan forward. He picked up a large branch. The balance of comfort in his hand was reminiscent of the lessons he learned as a child. "Stay with me," he whispered to Jamie, feeling their connected intent strengthen. In that wild moment amidst the snarling chaos, Ethan stood to face the wolves, poised not as a victor, but as a participant in nature's delicate equilibrium. They were powerful yet vulnerable creatures, demanding respect, not conflict. "Hey!" he shouted, surprising them, and even himself with the volume. "We don't mean any harm, we're just passing through." As the attention of the wolves shifted sharply, Ethan noticed Jamie peeking out from behind him. For the first time, a flicker of confidence lit his eyes. In that visceral instance, they fully realized their capacity to generate influence, to confront the tempest not merely with fear but with courage. But as the wolf beneath the alpha tilted its head, a warning howl pierced the air, breaking their newfound focus. Ethan's pulse quickened once more. This was just the beginning of their lesson, one that might leave him questioning everything he thought he knew. What would it take to defuse this volatile standoff? And in the heart of unpredictability, what revelations awaited them as they took their stand? Ethan's voice trembled even as he projected confidence, the primal stare of the wolves weighing heavily on his chest. He felt every nerve fire with urgency, but a quiet determination anchored him. Jamie stood resolutely behind him, a flicker of courage igniting in his young frame. This was their moment to redefine fear, not only as an adversary, but as a teacher. "Let's try to show them we mean no harm," Ethan reiterated softly. His heart raced, on the precipice of instinctual fight or flight, but he pushed the instinctual panic down, just as they had discussed many times before. He focused on the alpha, its steady gaze fixed on him. With deliberate slowness, Ethan stretched his hand out, palm forward, a universal sign for peace. "No harm," he repeated, letting the word roll off his tongue, hoping it would resonate with the wildness surrounding him. Suddenly, a snapping sound, a result of the branch he'd previously picked up cracking underfoot, pierced the air, sending the wolves darting back for a split second. It felt like betrayal, yet it also opened a momentary window of opportunity. Ethan seized it. "Now, Jamie! Backward, carefully!" They stepped back in unison, a calculated retreat rather than a panicked flight. Jamie mirrored this with surprising grace, each footfall echoing Ethan's intent to remain calm and assertive amid chaos. Step after cautious step, they moved as one, the serene yet tense atmosphere brimming with primal stakes. The wolves hesitated, maintaining an instinctual distance but eyeing them curiously. Ethan watched with bated breath as the alpha tilted its head, assessing them. Were they perceived as foolish intruders or merely misunderstood wanderers? "We're just passing through," Ethan carried on, his voice steadying. "We're not threats." Each word felt like a fragile bridge between two worlds, a fragile thread connecting their humanity to the wildness just in front of them. It was on this fine thread of connection that Ethan realized he was charting more than just a physical path. He was honoring the essence of coexistence. With a sudden movement, the alpha took a step forward, and the others mimicked its sudden urge, drawn toward the impulse of leadership. Ethan felt a wash of fear but clung to resolve, tightly grasping the symbolism of the earlier fawn's bravery. He had to be more than a protector, he had to be a communicator. "Let's be strong, Jamie," he urged, leaning slightly back to exchange a glance with his son who had remained alert, eyes wide but resolute. It was clear they were navigating uncharted waters together. The wolves drew closer. Ethan could almost feel their breath. An unexpected realization struck him. These creatures weren't merely instinctual beasts. They held a structured society, much like him and Jamie. They were protectors of their own, seeking assurance amid their own fears. Just as Ethan vowed to protect Jamie, the wolves were merely asserting their territory. "Okay," he whispered to Jamie in a moment of stillness. "We're going to remain calm. Focus on your breathing like we practiced." As they breathed in and out, the alpha paused, its focus softening as it regarded their synchronized rhythm. Each exhale served not just to calm their hearts, but to project an air of peace forward into the gathering storm. But just as hope flickered a potential resolution, a loud crack echoed from the trees behind them, startling both man and beast. The moment shattered, and Ethan's heart dropped as the wolves snapped their attention away. "Stay behind me!" he shouted instinctively, heart hammering as he prepared for the unknown. What had the unexpected sound signified? Was it a new threat? And could they maintain their newfound resolve in the face of emerging danger, or would they be forced into a hasty retreat? Ethan's mind raced with these questions, wondering how far they could take this fragile journey of empowerment before the wild claimed them back. The crack echoed ominously through the foliage, breaking the tenuous connection Ethan had begun to forge with the wolves. Their heads snapped in unison, the air thick with tension and uncertainty. It was a reminder that the wild was an unpredictable arena, one he had stepped into with Jamie on this overcast afternoon. Ethan's breath quickened, the familiar rush of adrenaline pushing his instincts to fend off danger to the forefront. Yet beneath that instinctual urge was a burgeoning sense of self-awareness. He needed to rethink his approach. How often had he rushed into situations without analyzing the underlying dynamics? Here, surrounded by wolves, he faced both physical and profound, metaphorical dangers. "Stay low, Jamie," he instructed in a whisper, fighting to keep the tremor out of his voice. His son followed suit, drawn into the urgency of the moment. Behind them, the unseen source of the crack remained silent, veiled in the shadows of the trees. The wolves had likely picked up on this disturbance but were still tethered to their curiosity about the strangers before them. Taking a deep breath, Ethan turned his focus back to the alpha. Clear eyes, once set on him with wary intrigue, were now sharp with instinctual authority. He needed to convey more than just words. He needed to embody calmness, to project it as a protective aura. As he re-established eye contact, he wished he could transfer his resolve to the wolves, showing them they could coexist. "You're not predators, you're protectors. Just like us," he murmured, testing the sound of the truth that felt more like a hope. But the wolves were restless, weariness creeping into their demeanor. The alpha shuffled its paws, and a few others scanned the shadows where the sound had emanated. They were searching, like Ethan, for clarity in a storm of uncertainty. Suddenly another crack of a twig echoed, closer this time. Ethan's heart leaped into his throat. He had elicited their interest, but the profound wisdom of the wilderness was cleft by the dread that another entity was out there. What would happen if this perceived threat turned their attention back on him and Jamie? "Focus on your breathing," he urged quietly to Jamie, yet he struggled to embody the calm he prescribed. His throat was dry with fear. Within him rose a burgeoning realization. He was standing at a crossroads, not just between them and the wolves, but also within himself. He needed to confront what was fear and what was uncertainty. Each breath he took mirrored his battle, an internal struggle against being paralyzed by fear. As Ethan attempted to anchor himself, he felt the ground beneath give way to a fundamental truth. Fear could be layered, offering room for understanding if he could perceive it correctly. Not all fear called for flight. Some demanded intricate negotiation with understanding. "Listen," he whispered to Jamie as he gently grasped his son's shoulder. The tension of the moment became palpable, as both man and boy focused on the shifting dynamics of their environment. Perhaps they too could create a different narrative here, If they could affirm that their presence didn't signal danger but curiosity, then something extraordinary happened. The alpha tilted its head, and against all expectation, it let out a low, rumbling sound that resonated through the air, almost like a melody. The other wolves paused, curiosity drawing them back to the two intruders rather than away. Could it be possible? Had he stumbled into a moment of revelation? The dance of communication in the wilderness began to unfold around him. With each heartbeat echoing in his ears, Ethan recognized that he was not merely trying to survive. He was beginning to engage in dialogue, not through words, but through presence and intent. Yet the question loomed, would this connection hold in the face of inevitable unknowns? Just then, as the alpha's sound faded into the treetop silence, another ominous noise sliced through the atmosphere from the depths of the trees. The wolves' stiffened bodies turned unnaturally rigid, and fear gripped Ethan once more. The shadows stirred ominously again. Who, or what, awaited in the unknown? Would they face the emerging threat together, strengthened by their unspoken bond, or would the wilderness reshape them in a way they never anticipated? Ethan felt the air thicken around him, laden with an unnameable suspense as the ominous sounds loomed from the darkness. He stood rooted, overwhelmed, grappling with the competing impulses within him, instinct to protect Jamie and the burgeoning understanding he had cultivated with the wolves. The tension rippling through the alpha, now a palpable current, compelled Ethan to delve deeper. The instinct to flee battled against a deep, nascent resolve. Could the wolves pick up on his uncertainty? The shimmering connection felt precarious, teetering on the edge of a knife. He needed to either seal this bond or let it dissolve, all while navigating an unknowable threat. His responsibilities as a protector were warring with the desire to connect. Armed with nothing but his awareness, he chose engagement. "Breathe with me, Jamie," he murmured again. The young boy nodded, his eyes wide with trust, mirroring the tension coursing through them both. Ethan's grip tightened on his shoulder, grounding both of them in the precarious moment. Each inhale turned into a steady heartbeat against the chaotic noise of rustling branches. He felt Jamie's tension mirroring his, both just as much warriors as they were vulnerable newcomers. The alpha took a step forward, head low yet unyielding. Its fur seemed to bristle, a stark contrast to its initial curiosity. The challenge was mounting, and Ethan could feel the weight of it pushing against his chest. In that instant, within the wild confines of the forest, Ethan's conflict crystallized. The wolves were not simply a reflection of nature, they embodied the battles he faced within. He stepped slightly forward, pushing the boundary of their shared space. A small move, but significant. The wolves shifted, muscles taut, and instinctively, he understood their stance. This was a connection on the edge of either becoming nurturing or combative. It was the primordial dance for dominance, a ritual he had unwittingly become part of. Would he dominate through fear, or could he invoke respect through understanding? Not a threat, he projected silently into the air, letting conviction suffuse his being. The innate tension that wrapped around them began to ebb slightly, with moments stretching into eternity. The sound from the dark began to mute, curiosity now drawing near instead of aggression. The wolves continued vigilantly searching the forest, but their focus now strayed less from him and more towards understanding. A rustling crescendo erupted from the shadows, shattering the tenuous peace. Ethan's heart raced. Instinct screamed at him to protect Jamie, but he fought through, calming thoughts swirling in his mind. He remembered why they were here. This journey was supposed to redefine him as a father, a protector, and a man who faced not only the wilderness but his own fears. Amid the chaos, another adorned figure emerged, a fawn, delicate and unassuming. It stumbled from the darkness as if drawn by the spotlight of vulnerability. Ethan's previous instinct to retreat morphed. Instead, he felt that now was the time to hold his ground. If the wolves were protectors, could they view the fawn as a part of that dominion rather than prey? The wolves, momentarily distracted, watched the fawn as it ventured further into their territory, a moment of choice unfurling before them. Was this the opportunity Ethan had been waiting for? Perhaps this was the crux of his understanding, to engage with the wilderness not as an obstacle but as a partnership. The fawn's innocence could challenge the norms of predator and prey, illuminating a pathway of coexistence. Ethan's mind raced, grappling with the moral implications. Was this a chance to shift his perspective, to demonstrate to his son that what unfolded next would resonate beyond mere survival? Just as uncertainty crystallized into determination, a growl reverberated through the air, pulling Ethan back to the present. Their connection with the wolves was fragile, and now it hung by a thread. Before he could respond, the alpha's gaze shot back to him, challenging the bond they had woven. Ethan recognized this profound juncture, the moment where his philosophy would mold his actions. Fear threatened to snuff out hope, but he chose to stand resolute, centered in the suffocating energy of the woods. Together. The word echoed in his mind as he rallied for clarity. He had never considered navigating life's chaos this way, but now, uncertainly gifted with purpose, he faced the wolves head-on. Would they recognize his intent? And more troubling, what consequence awaited in the shadows if they didn't? Ethan braced himself for the next revelation. The fate of the fawn loomed, the wolves' decision hung perilously, and within all that, so did his evolution as a protector and the embodiment of his values. The sharp growl of the alpha echoed like a thunderclap, reverberating around the clearing and leaving Ethan's heart drumming unsteadily in his chest. He felt an electric urgency running through him, a dangerous pulse that amplified every breath. The fawn's delicate form trembled at the edge of uncertainty, while the attentiveness of the wolves shifted dangerously, hunger battling instinct. Canines glimmered in the faint light filtering through the trees, sharp and unforgiving, but Ethan projected a sense of peace. "Breathe," he repeated to Jamie, who stood rooted in fear. Rather than the tumult of events, Ethan focused inward, forcing his mind to quieten the chaos. What if displaying vulnerability could disarm the wolves and transform the fear into respect? Ethan recalled the tales he'd heard, legends of ancient ties between humans and nature, moments of understanding rather than fear. How often had he dashed into situations demanding dominance instead of connection? An epiphany gripped him like icy fingers. Could he show the wolves an alternative pathway? He moved forward a step, feet firm against the earth, drawing Jamie closer, creating a barrier of resolve between the young boy and impending danger. "I can protect us," the words whispered beneath the cacophony of growls, subtle but filled with conviction. Jamie's fingers clung to his sleeve. His trust was undeniable, and it fueled Ethan's determination. The alpha regarded him, its gaze demanding acknowledgement, as if questioning the integrity of his intentions. He locked eyes with the creature, aware of the lifetime instinct to raise the stakes in matters of survival. Without consciously realizing it, he mirrored the animal's stance, shoulders back, chest open, inviting dialogue instead of hostility. In the backdrop, the fawn remained an island in a churning sea, blissfully unaware of the predatory theater about to unfold. The wolves edged closer, muscles coiled with possibilities. Ethan understood the stakes were high. If he failed to bond, the consequences would be swift and cruel. He caught sight of Jamie's terrified expression reflected in his son's wide eyes, and a wave of desperation cascaded through him. The moment before he spoke lingered, suspended in time. "I see you. I see all of you." The words cascaded forth, not just as a plea for understanding, but as an invitation to collaborate with the wild, a declaration of interdependence. For the first time, he hoped to transcend roles. It was more than just predator and prey. He was connected to everything within this wilderness. The alpha leaned in, its growl dulled into a rumble of contemplation. The surrounding wolves mirrored this energy. What once teetered on aggression flickered with curiosity. Ethan felt the tension create space around him, and for the first time, he envisioned a bridge forming between them. Clarity struck him. This was not merely a face-off. It was a chance to dismantle the default narratives wired into his being. His internal refrain persisted. Could respect supplant fear? Could understanding take root in this wild? In a breath of silence, a shift occurred. Jamie's hand tightened upon his as the young boy sensed his intention and began to believe in their united front against the unknown. The forest, holding its breath, began to pulse with possibilities. Yet the woods remained shrouded in shadows, and an unexpected sound crept back into the quiet, a sharp rustle that sharpened the stakes once again. Ethan's mind contained a whirlwind of thoughts. Was their fragile peace about to shatter? Deep within, an unsettling sense suggested he was but one breath away from everything falling apart. Would the fawn slip away safely from this ordeal? And more importantly, would Ethan's moment of courage be enough to shape the outcome of this encounter? All was poised on a knife's edge. His role as protector and father now blended seamlessly with the need for connection with the wolves and the nature unfolding around them. This intersection of identity bore tension and revelation, inching closer to defining moments. And in the piercing silence, he readied himself for the decision that would test everything he thought he knew. Just then, from the darkness, the new threat emerged, rattling the fragile tranquility, an unseen rival challenging the tenuous bond he struggled to forge. Ethan stood on the precipice of daunting uncertainty, the weight of his choices pressing down on him like the heavy Montana sky. Just as tension peaked with the wolves poised for action, they all turned to confront the source of disturbance, the growling echoes deepening into the clearing. It was enough to disrupt the fragile peace he had begun to cultivate. His mind raced as he anticipated their next move. The standoff with the wolves forced him to examine himself in the glare of the moment. Here was a life-and-death scenario, elevating all he had been learning in just a few fleeting hours, a lesson on strength masked in vulnerability. How often had he felt cornered in his own struggles, pondering what true courage meant? But this moment lured him into an enhanced state of awareness. Instead of succumbing to fear, he chose to grasp the navigation of trust within the wilderness. Was he ready to shift the narrative from one of dominance to one of coexistence? A rumbled vow began to take shape in his heart, surging with the understanding that true protection correlates with empathy. He could be bold through shared connection, not merely through control or escape. With bated breath, he clutched the branch firmly, utilizing it not as a weapon but as a reflection of his intent. It became a symbol of defense, strength, laced with invitation. He sensed Jamie's anticipation behind him, their unspoken bond transcending language, a silent communication resonant with trust. In that charged instant, Ethan locked eyes with the alpha wolf, emboldened now by an insatiable determination to demonstrate to both the wolves and Jamie that they could face anything together. His voice steadied, anchoring the near chaos. "We are not enemies." The warmth ignited in his tone, a palpable shield against rising anxiety. To his surprise, the alpha paused, tilting its head slightly as if processing this offer of peace. Beneath the primal instinct of predator and prey, the possibility of understanding flickered defiantly. Just like the tender fawn that now stood frozen in fear, Ethan understood that it was not just about the fight. It was about how they all could respond to unpredictability. Earth turned beneath him in a transformative whirl. These wolves were not simply obstacles but reflections of the trials within himself and his fractured relationship with Jamie. Each growl mirrored a voice from his past, that hounding self-doubt he had inherited as a burden from his own upbringing. New resolve surged within him, guiding his purpose. For a heartbeat, everything seemed to still. The predators caught off guard by this intrusion of clarity. Finally, he breathed deeply, remembering both the vulnerability and tenacity he had embraced during the earlier encounter. He turned slightly to include Jamie in this silent moment of transformation. "You can face the wild and its challenges, even when it feels overwhelming," he urged quietly. Right then, the wolves shifted. The alpha took a step back as if acknowledging Ethan's gesture, a gesture that had spiraled from fear to meaning. But their moment of delicate peace was interrupted once more by a violent crack from the deeper woods. Heart racing, Ethan instinctively pivoted to protect Jamie, adrenaline surging through his veins anew. The emergence of a larger figure sent shockwaves through the pack, an intruder that disrupted the trust established moments before. An imposing grizzly bear sauntered into the clearing, further complicating the dynamics. It moved with an unsettling confidence, eyes fixated on the fawn, eliciting low growls from the wolves. Chaos erupted in that moment. Instinctual survival kicked in as each creature assessed and weighed the threat. "Stay close, Jamie," Ethan commanded as adrenaline surged. This was not a time for retreat. This was time to stand together. Here, amidst extraordinary circumstances, the lesson unfolded. The wolves had the instinct to protect their territory, yet vulnerability loomed, and so did participation in a life far more extraordinary than what they had previously known. They were all connected across a continuum fraught with challenges. Together, Ethan repeated, emphasizing their union against the imminent threat. He observed the wolves as they gathered their resolve, instinct weaving through collective action. The fawn trembled at the edges of survival, while the grizzly eyed it with primal intent, bridging an unresolved tension across the landscape. Ethan tightened his grip on the branch again, this time ready to defend if the wolves shifted to aggression against the bear. The pressing need to protect Jamie radiated within him, but now it transcended instinct. It pulsated with awareness. Against all odds, he was beginning to demonstrate tangible growth. Fear dangled precariously alongside awareness, each moment anchoring him deeper into both purpose and courage. No longer was he simply a bystander. He emerged as a participant in the wilderness, choosing engagement instead of avoidance. "Show them compassion," he urged, sensing Jamie's burgeoning courage mirrored in the unfolding chaos. The stronger he became about voicing their bond, the more empowered they both grew in embracing the unknown. "We can navigate this terrain." The wolves positioned themselves side by side, observing the unpredictable tension unfolding between them and the grizzly. Instead of cowering, he stood tall, embodying the strength he desired to cultivate within both himself and Jamie. A standoff emerged. When clarity flooded through the beating hearts of the creatures encircling the clearing, the bear stumbled momentarily, flinching from the unexpected confidence radiating from Ethan and the unexpected alliance of wolves. In stark contrast to chaos, the clarity deepened and shifted yet again, settling like fog upon them. "Don't rush. Stay grounded," Ethan whispered to Jamie, solidifying both of their resolves. They had traversed far from where they had begun. Vulnerability had transformed, not into fear, but into a celebration of connection. The bear snarled one last time before shifting back into the shadows, an unexpected surrender that sent waves of shock through the remaining life in the scene. The wolves continued to observe, chests puffed, as if acknowledging their newfound confidence. Jamie leaned into his father, a myriad of emotions showcased on his face. Ethan inhaled deeply. The wild remained an untamed landscape, but it no longer felt menacing. It brimmed with opportunities, anchored by the promise of understanding. They had navigated an uncertain wilderness together tonight, coming together in the face of danger to reinforce growth over fear. They achieved a noteworthy victory, not only over the imagery of the encroaching wilderness, but over the tumultuous trials that had strained their relationship prior. Till that moment, Ethan realized the most pivotal connection didn't lie solely in survival. The foundation blossomed from shared experiences. It was a legacy that every challenge they faced together would propel them to great strides. As they turned to leave, Ethan felt a growing sense of fulfillment. Alongside Jamie, he stepped forward, more resolute than ever to embrace every storm life threw at them. By integrating trust with vulnerability, they were unfurling a bond forged in wisdom, acceptance, and a desire for deeper connections to flourish. "Together, Jamie," he echoed, their promise renewed in the heart of uncertainty. They were walking toward their own story now, built on triumph over the wild uncertainties that once held them captive. Life would still bring challenge, shifting tides would occur, but they were now the architects of their destiny. The wilderness was theirs to navigate, and together, they would conquer anything that lay ahead. In that assurance, Ethan found the profound fulfillment he had searched for, not merely within the depths of the wild, but within himself and his role as a father. It was time for Jamie and Ethan to embrace life's unpredictable journey, one courageous moment at a time. Now more than ever, this triumphant transformation called for you to take action. Don't wait another second. Subscribe immediately to our channel to stay tuned for more exclusive stories of personal growth and emotional journeys. Hit that like button to feed the algorithm and help us reach more hearts. Comment your thoughts and theories about Ethan and Jamie's journey and how they faced the wilderness together. And share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring conclusion. Your support matters. This is the moment to show your love for personal overcoming stories.